this is your opportunity, and you being several of the key stakeholder groups that are really interested in this area. So we've got splendid representation from the community, from local government people. So we have Mayor Lynn McLaughlin, and we have Sonia from Charters, Deputy Mayor of Charters Terrace, and I think we've also got the chair of the Water Committee for Townsville, Representative Russell. Where's Russell? He didn't make it. Okay, right. So we've got great local government representation from the community. We've got farmers, we've got fishers, and especially amongst the farmers, we've got irrigation farmers. So thank you all for making the time available for this. And this is your opportunity to ask questions. You can also ask questions. This is an opportunity to ask some questions from any of the previous speakers if you have a burning one for them. But this panel in front of you represents a great deal of knowledge indeed. I'll just give you a little more information about Keith Noble. Keith, many of you will know as chair of the Terraine board for the Wet Tropics area, so the NRM board for the Wet Tropics. But he's Townsville based as a planner and architect with his company Inside Out Architects. But he is one of the more eclectic people I've come across, so he also farms rare fruits and does a lot of other things too. But he has a bachelor's in agricultural science and a master's and a PhD from JCU. He's also non-executive director of the Reef and Rainforest Research Centre. So Keith Noble, thank you very much for making time available. One of our two Scots, and interestingly, they're both geomorphologists, so there must be something genetic about this. But Scott Crawford is a very familiar face to many of you. He spent the last 10 years as CEO of NQ Dry Tropics, and for 5 years before that was the operations manager for Burdekin Dry Tropics, NRM. So he has immense experience in this area. And as I say, a geomorphologist with a degree from in 1983 from New Zealand, and he's worked with CSIRO, and we're very pleased to have him on our panel. Thank you so much. Damien, Professor Damien Burrows, and Director of TropWATER. We've already heard from him as a speaker, and we're very grateful for his presence. As you've already picked up, he's also director of the group that actually looks after several of our other speakers. So this is a very significant research and development group within JCU. And Damien heads up the hub for the national group working in that area. Our other Scott, Professor Scott Crawford. Scott, Scott Smithers. He and I work very closely together, so I shouldn't forget his name. Scott is a professor in geomorphology. He's got 30 years experience working in this area, and again, we're very grateful to have his presence here. Keith Bristow, you've heard his extraordinary CV. Thank you, Keith, very much for your very punchy talk. And over 30 years experience here in CSIRO, and he has an honorary professorship from South Africa, from Pretoria University, and a long history in the area. Just prompt a few, well, I'd actually start by saying, the panel, is there anything you've heard from our speakers today that you would like to make a point about immediately? And there's a mic running up and down there. There are some antiseptic wipes if you're worried about the rest of the panel holding the microphone, but up to you. You can have gloves if you want them. But, is there anything you would like to say, reflecting on what we've heard from speakers already today? Thanks, Damien.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that's been said today, but I've seen almost everything said today challenged in the media or by different political elements and used as a lever for a for or against case. And that is really important because we can't, whilst the individual elements are so important, it's the entirety of the decision that is important, and that is so hard to do in a charged political environment and through the media. So I have thoughts about how that can be addressed, but I'll save them for maybe later.
Thank you, Keith. Scott, any introductory comments you want to make? Or?
I probably agree with Keith in terms of, I guess the water debate in Australia seems to fall into two camps. There's the antagonists and the protagonists, and never the twain shall meet. There's just a couple of points I'd like to pick up on. Keith Bristow said in his talk that there is no balance, there's choices and decisions, and I think that's one of the realities that we've got to face around water management. You know, there is no sort of balance nirvana where both sides can be satisfied. You have to make hard choices, and there are trade-offs associated with that. I think the other thing I'd like to just note is that there is no new water. Essentially what you do with water storage, you're taking it from one use, beneficiary or place, and you're moving it to another. So there is no magical new water that comes out of building storages.
Thank you so much. Damien, anything you'd like to add from what you've heard?
No, but I just, one thing that wasn't really clear or didn't come through today, which it would be extremely relevant to any of these proposals in the Burdekin and anywhere on the Great Barrier Reef coast, is the water quality targets that exist through the Reef Water Quality Improvement Program. So it'll be very hard or very interesting politically for any development all of these any of these developments will increase sediment or nutrient, at least, definitely nutrient, maybe sediment or to the reef. It's just about almost impossible to stop some sort of nutrient runoff from any development, no matter how well you do it. And we have these targets which the government has spent in the billions, really, between federal government, state governments, local governments, industry groups. It's in the billions that we spent to try and improve water quality. And then if you put in a development that then undoes some of that good work and all the time and effort and sacrifices have been made to achieve progress against those water quality targets. And that wasn't raised today, but that's going to be where a lot of the debate will be. Because those water quality targets are set into a plan that's had bipartisan support from both sides of the politics and federal and state level for 17 years or so now. And any development's going to impinge on the progress that's been made to date. So that hasn't been raised today, but I think that's a really big issue. That will be a highlight issue politically and publicly for any proposal in the Burdekin catchment. Scott wants to comment on that further.
Thank you, Damien.
It's a big issue that hasn't been raised so far. That's a huge
very
one.
salutary reminder that whole of catchment and integrated management means out into the waters of the Great Barrier Reef too, so thank you. Scott Smithers, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So look, I think most of the things I was going to say have already been said, but I just want to again, I guess, stress the importance of one of the key messages for Damien's earlier talk, which is about the variability. And I think trying to detect change and to isolate cause and effect in highly variable systems at large spatial scales is fraught with problems which, pardon the pun, might muddy the waters about decision making. And I think the way to get clarity, again, pardon the pun on that, is to use good science. And maybe I'm a bit optimistic that good science has any traction. It does, but I think good science has to be applied here to really make the best decisions going forward. It's really important.
Great, thank you. Keith, anything to add to your?
I guess climate change. I think we haven't said anything about that. I think we need to be putting a lot of effort into understanding and trying to influence climate change so that we still have a habitable planet to live on. I guess at the bottom of that is the environment. We really need to look after our environment. And I guess the key things there really is the water and the soils. So those two things are really critical for us in terms of doing well as a society. So I'd like to see a lot more work around soils and water systems, really. And I guess setting and meeting sustainability targets, I think, might be a way of helping.
Great, thank you, Keith.